Have you ever felt that your mind never stops, even when your body begs for rest? That every emotion is amplified, and every decision seems to carry the weight of the world? For those who think and feel too much, living can feel like a constant battle between reason and heart. But what if I told you that this intensity is not a flaw, but rather a secret map to understand yourself and the world? In this video, we are going to explore the philosophy of anxiety, discover why it exists, how it shapes your perception, and perhaps reveal ways to live with it without being consumed. Get ready to look at your emotions in a way no one has ever told you. If themes like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. From what place in the world are you watching this video right now? Leave your answer in the comments. Those who think too much know this torment well. The mind never rests. It is like being in a dark room where every noise seems like a monster about to jump out. The thought runs, anticipates, imagines, exaggerates. It does not matter if the threat is real or only fabricated by the brain. The feeling is the same. It is like having an alarm ringing without stopping, and no one knows where the off button is. Anxiety seeps into the smallest things, writing a message and deleting it right away, afraid of being misunderstood, rehearsing every conversation mentally before it happens, and in the end, getting tired before even acting. It is as if the brain itself were a cruel editor, always ready to cut, revise, and criticize every word. Those who feel too much know how draining this is. It is curious how the anxious mind seems like a video game hero with maximum speed, but no direction. It runs, jumps, dodges, but gets nowhere. The problem is not just overthinking. It is feeling too much in every detail, as if every gesture, every silence, or every look carried a hidden interpretation. Life becomes a constant deciphering of invisible enigmas. This intensity of thoughts and emotions might even seem like a superpower, but in practice, it is a weight. It is like watching a movie in fast forward, trying to understand every scene, while others seem relaxed, laughing at the jokes. The anxious person does not just watch the movie of life. They pause, rewind, analyze, repeat, search for script flaws. In the end, they lose the pleasure of the experience. And maybe you have already noticed this in yourself, that inability to disconnect, to simply exist in the present. While others enjoy, your mind is already thinking about what might go wrong afterward. It is as if relaxing were impossible, because there is always a shadow of uncertainty hovering. The restless mind never sleeps, even when the body begs for rest. This excess of thought creates a paradoxical effect. The more you think to try to avoid problems, the more problems you create. It is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The fear of mistakes creates insecurity. Insecurity generates anxiety, and anxiety reinforces fear. A vicious cycle in which the brain itself becomes the enemy of the heart. Those who feel too much also end up intensely living the pain of others. A cutting comment, a cold look, or even silence can feel like a devastating rejection. It is as if every detail were magnified 10 times inside the mind. The person does not just feel, but resonates, absorbs, and carries. And this weighs a lot. Maybe that is why many seek refuge in quick distractions, social media, short videos, anything that silences the internal noise. But deep down, silence always returns, and with it, the avalanche of thoughts. And then the inevitable question arises. Is there a way to live with such a restless mind without drowning in the excess of emotion? When an anxious person hears the classic advice, "You need to relax," the reaction is almost always anger or frustration. Because deep down, it sounds like telling a drowning person, "Take a deep breath and stay calm." It is as if the pain were minimized, turned into a superficial instruction. Those who feel anxiety in their skin know it is not that simple. And this trivialization only makes the weight worse. The irritation is not born only from the advice itself, but from the contrast with reality. Just look around. Tragic news every second. Social networks overflowing with comparisons and judgments. Bills piling up that never stop arriving. The scenario is already chaotic by nature. So saying, relax, sounds almost like a bad joke. Imagine someone trying to sleep in the middle of a storm while a neighbor plays drums at 3 in the morning. That is exactly what anxiety feels when it hears relax. The whole world is on fire, and someone shows up with a leaky bucket. The result is obvious. Instead of peace comes more irritation, more fatigue, and a sense of abandonment. What is curious is that this anger at the obvious often reveals something deeper, the desperate desire for a real solution. It is not that the person does not want to calm down. They do, but they want a path, not a cliche. They want an answer that makes sense in the face of chaos. And it is exactly this search that opens space for philosophies, stories, and metaphors that go beyond common psychology. It is at this point that anxiety begins to be seen not only as an illness or problem, but as a reflection of the very era. Living today means being surrounded by uncertainties. And the more information, more stimuli, more speed, the greater the internal collapse. It is not just you who are restless. It is the entire civilization. It is the collective mind burning. When the person realizes this, they understand that they are not alone, that their mind is not defective, but rather a mirror of the world they live in. Of course, this does not resolve the pain immediately, but it already changes the perspective. Anxiety is not just an individual flaw. It is a collective symptom, as if everyone were trapped in a room with sirens blaring at the same time. This awareness, however, also brings more weight. Because if the problem is structural, how to face it? If chaos is everywhere, how to find an island of peace? That is when the temptation to escape arises, to disconnect, to numb oneself. But fleeing does not eliminate the problem. It only postpones the inevitable encounter with what the mind insists on avoiding. Deep down, the true challenge is not to silence anxiety, but to learn to live with it. It is to discover that, even amid the noise, there is a thread of silence waiting to be found. But how do you reach that silence in a world that never stops screaming? Those who think and feel too much have an almost automatic tendency to want to control every detail of life. Every decision, every result, every reaction of others seems to depend on a perfect strategy. It is like trying to play chess with the entire world at the same time, while the pieces move without warning. The desire for control is born from fear, but ironically, it increases anxiety. The need to control everything creates a cruel paradox. The more you try to ensure nothing goes wrong, the more you distance yourself from the very experience of living. It is like holding sand in your hands. The more you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. The anxious mind becomes a hostage of its own plans, always worried, always anticipating imaginary disasters. And this obsession is not limited to big situations. Small everyday details become battlefields. A conversation, a message sent, a trivial decision. Everything is revisited, analyzed, reanalyzed. It is as if every moment required a detailed instruction manual, while life insists on being improvisation. The tension builds up and the mind never rests. Sometimes control is confused with productivity. The anxious person believes that being in charge means avoiding mistakes, failures, or disappointments. But the result is emotional and mental exhaustion. It is like driving a car with the handbrake on. You make an effort, but you do not move forward. The mind tires and the heart suffers, not realizing that life's rhythm cannot be forced. This trap of control also affects relationships. Expecting everything to be perfect with friends, family, or partners generates frustration and conflict. Every gesture or word outside expectations triggers an exaggerated reaction, as if emotional stability depended on every detail. The result? Distance, resentment, and more anxiety. A difficult cycle to break. It is interesting to note that the anxious mind rarely perceives how much it loses trying to control the impossible. Simple moments, spontaneous joys, unexpected laughter. Everything goes unnoticed because attention is focused on the next problem to prevent. It is like watching a sunset with your eyes glued to the clock. Beauty slips away while you calculate every second. What appears as extreme discipline or responsibility is, in fact, disguised fear. Fear of making mistakes, of being rejected, of losing control of one's own life. Anxiety feeds on this fear, turning every decision into an internal battle. It is a silent war, which few can perceive from the outside, but which consumes energy and well-being intensely. Then the inevitable question arises. If controlling everything increases anxiety, what is the way? How can you let life follow its flow without feeling at the mercy of chaos? The answer is not simple, but it involves recognizing what can and what cannot be mastered. And that, in itself, is already a deep and transformative challenge. Those who feel too much constantly have the impression that they are late for everything. Every decision seems delayed, every action insufficient. It is like running on a treadmill that speeds up by itself. You make an effort, but you never reach the end. This feeling is not just about schedules, but about life itself, a sense of always being behind your own time. The effect of this is distressing. The mind fills with thoughts about what should have been done, about missed opportunities or past mistakes. Anxiety becomes a constant echo, repeating phrases like, "What if I had acted differently?" Or, "Why did I not do this earlier?" It is a mental cycle that consumes energy and confidence. The feeling of being late also projects onto the future. Every step is accompanied by questioning. Am I choosing the right path? Will I be able to? It is like walking on an unstable bridge, looking at every stone before stepping. The mind never relaxes, always alert, always anticipating possible failures. This affects not only productivity, but the joy of living in the moment. Small victories, achievements, and experiences go unnoticed because attention is focused on the next commitment or goal. It is like watching a movie with your eyes glued to the clock. You miss the essence of the story while worrying about what comes next. Curiously, this perception of lateness creates hurry even in simple things. Eating, walking, talking, everything has to be efficient, fast, planned. And this, ironically, increases mental fatigue. The anxious mind turns every second into a performance test, forgetting that living is also about feeling and experiencing. And the more the person tries to make up for the delay, the more they overload their own life. New commitments, tasks, and goals accumulate, creating a sense of lack of control. It is like trying to fill a glass that is already overflowing. No matter how much liquid you pour, it will always spill, and you end up getting wet inside. This perception of always being behind can also generate silent guilt. I should be doing more, better, faster, the mind repeats. It is an invisible but constant weight that corrodes confidence and well-being. Anxiety feeds on this self-imposed pressure, turning each day into a battle between what is and what should be. Then comes the inevitable reflection. Is it possible to slow down without losing the rhythm of life? How to accept that not everything depends on you, that delays are part of the journey, and that time, in fact, has its own flow? This question opens the way to a greater understanding of anxiety and the meaning of living in the present. Those who feel too much know that emotions are not just colors on the canvas of life. They are storms. A joy may feel too radiant, a sadness too deep. Each emotion amplifies, reverberates, and insists on not being ignored. It is like living with the volume always at maximum, with no button to turn it down, feeling every note, every chord, every silence. This intensity makes even simple moments more complex. A compliment turns into a universe of meanings. A criticism becomes a labyrinth of interpretations. It is as if every gesture, every word, carried a weight no one else perceives. The anxious mind amplifies, multiplies, and reflects everything without a filter. And of course, there is emotional fatigue. Feeling everything so strongly is exhausting. It is like running a marathon every day, without pause, without a finish line. Energy runs out, the body protests, and the mind keeps racing. But the person cannot switch off, because each emotion carries an importance that cannot be ignored. The curious thing is that this intensity can also be a source of beauty and creativity. Writers, musicians, and artists often possess the same sensitivity. But without tools to deal with it, this force becomes a prison. It is like having a gold mine but not knowing how to extract it without getting hurt. And anxiety increases when one tries to control or hide these emotions. It is like holding a water balloon. The more force, the greater the risk of bursting. Each feeling kept inside creates internal pressure, and any external trigger can unleash an emotional avalanche, leaving the person vulnerable and exhausted. In addition, feeling too much can generate social hypersensitivity. A cold look, a harsh word, or even silence are amplified. It is as if each detail were multiplied, weighing 10 times more than it really is. The mind does not filter, it only amplifies, and the heart feels every vibration. This intensity can also make decisions difficult. Feeling each option, each consequence, and each risk in an amplified way creates paralysis. It is like trying to cross a swaying bridge over a turbulent river. The focus is so much on the danger that the natural movement is lost, and life seems stuck. Then the question arises almost naturally. Is it possible to embrace one's own sensitivity without being consumed by it? How to live fully without the intensity of emotions becoming a crushing weight? This reflection prepares the way for the next topic, about the relationship between anxiety and the perception of the world. Those who think and feel too much tend to carry an invisible burden, constant guilt. Every mistake, no matter how small, turns into a giant weight on the mind. It is like carrying a backpack full of stones, even when the day is sunny. The person blames themselves for everything, from past decisions to thoughts that are not even their choices. Self-judgment is silent but fierce. Every word said in the wrong way, every action that was not perfect, turns into relentless internal criticism. It is like having an inner judge who never takes a vacation. Anxiety feeds on this self-criticism, creating a constant sense of insufficiency. Curiously, this guilt is often exaggerated. The anxious mind magnifies responsibilities and consequences as if the whole world depended on each gesture. A small mistake turns into a disaster, and the person blames themselves as if they were guilty for everything around them. It is a weight disproportionate to reality. Furthermore, guilt creates cycles of self-sabotaging behavior. Anxiety generates fear of making mistakes. Fear generates hesitation, and hesitation increases guilt. It is like walking in circles, always trying to fix something that did not even need correction. Each attempt to punish or fix oneself reinforces anxiety itself. This feeling also affects relationships. People who feel too much may apologize excessively, avoid confrontations, or take on responsibilities that are not theirs. It is like trying to keep the peace at any cost, sacrificing one's own well-being. The anxious mind interprets guilt as a warning sign, not as an indicator of boundaries. The curious thing is that guilt and self-judgment often come from unrealistic expectations. The person wants to be perfect, never fail, please everyone, and anticipate problems. It is like trying to write a perfect book on the first page. Impossible and exhausting. Anxiety stays alive precisely because of this relentless pursuit of the impossible. Even when recognizing that guilt is exaggerated, it is difficult to switch off the mechanism. The mind insists on analyzing, predicting, correcting. It is like having a fire alarm that goes off without a fire, but that makes the body react as if there were real danger. Each feeling of guilt turns into energy that keeps anxiety alive. Then the reflection arises naturally. Is it possible to live with guilt without being consumed by it? How to accept that mistakes are part of life without the mind turning each slip into a catastrophe? This question opens the way to the last topic, about finding strategies to ease anxiety. Living with anxiety does not mean eliminating it completely. It is like learning to swim in turbulent waters. You do not control the waves, but you can stay afloat. The first step is to recognize the presence of the restless mind and intense emotions without judgment. Accepting that feeling too much is part of the experience is liberating. Small practices can create a breathing space. Breathing consciously, observing thoughts without clinging to them, and writing down emotions helps slow down. It is like pausing the game, reviewing the map, and deciding the next move without haste. Each moment of awareness creates room to live with less tension. Another strategy is to reconnect with the body. Walking, stretching, feeling the breath and the touch of the ground reduce the sense of mental overload. It is like landing smoothly after a turbulent flight. The body reminds the brain that there is safety in the present. Movement and mindfulness become powerful allies. Perspective also makes a difference. Understanding that anxiety is a natural response, not a personal failure, changes the emotional weight. It is like looking at a storm with curiosity instead of fear. You observe the phenomenon without being swallowed by it. The anxious mind needs this compassionate lens to breathe. Kinder internal dialogues help reduce self-judgment. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling too much, you can speak to yourself as you would to a friend. It is hard, I know, but let us take one step at a time. It is like having an inner mentor, welcoming and strategic, who reminds you that life does not demand perfection. It is also useful to create external boundaries. Reducing information overload, organizing commitments, and saying no when necessary are ways to protect the mind. It is like building a fence around a garden. You keep the chaos outside without suffocating the beauty that grows within. Healthy control is liberating. Finally, seeking external support makes a difference. Talking to friends, therapists, or affinity groups transforms the experience. It is like sharing the weight of a backpack. Together, it becomes lighter. Recognizing that anxiety is human and that others also feel emotional intensity creates connection and relief. The path is not simple, but it is possible to live with less tension and more presence. Each step, each practice, and each reflection help transform anxiety into a signal of attention, not a prison. And this opens doors to a more conscious, profound, and authentic life, even when the mind insists on running ahead of the body. So, after diving into this journey through the restless mind and intense emotions, what did you think of the content? Did you recognize yourself in any of these moments of anxiety, guilt, or intensity? I want to know. Which character or theme do you want me to analyze in the next video on the channel? Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to continue learning about the philosophy of the mind and the psychology of emotions. Each video is an opportunity to better understand yourself and live with more presence, even when the mind insists on running ahead of the heart. These two videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is only a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos on the side and start breaking that mirror. You will have to take the risk of clicking. So, which one will you choose?